Hearing Fang Hao's order, everyone was slightly stunned. An Jia was the first to react and said, "They want to steal the goods." According to Fang Hao's instructions, she had been observing the movements of the Iron Blood mercenary group and had noticed some subtle actions. Now that Fang Hao wanted to kill people directly, it must be to strike back before the enemy could make a move. Yes, they found a bandit named Gray Bear, and there are quite a few of them. We have about 20 minutes to eliminate the Iron Blood mercenary group first. Otherwise, it will be difficult to deal with them acting from both inside and outside. Fang Hao's speed of speech gradually increased. Everyone's faces became serious. Are we just going to kill them directly like this? And Jia continued to ask. Time is tight. Just kill them directly. After we have eliminated them all, I will explain to Tavik, Fang Hao said. Okay. Everyone nodded, swallowed the food in their mouths in 2 bites, and picked up their weapons. The junction of the two teams, Fang Hao and his group's aggressive approach still attracted the attention of the Iron Blood mercenary group. They also took out their weapons and became vigilant. Fang Hao stood at the rear of the team and shouted, Captain Godwin, my money bag is missing, and my men just saw your people doing it. Give me an explanation. As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at Godwin in the rear. That it was not uncommon for some people with sticky fingers to appear in the mercenary group from time to time. You must have seen it wrong. The people of our Iron Blood mercenary group would never do such a thing. Godwin looked at the other party warily, seeing that he could not lure Godwin out of the crowd. Fang Hao said directly, your people left something behind when they ran away. I'm not afraid of you denying it. As he said that, he took out a linen bag and threw it at the other party. However, the cloth bag that was thrown out did not control its strength well and flew over the heads of the Iron Blood mercenary group, attracting everyone's attention. Puff! The sound of a sharp weapon entering flesh suddenly sounded, followed by shouts of killing. Dimitrika led 50 heavy sword infantrymen and rushed directly into the enemy crowd, waving the giant sword in their hands and slashing at the enemies. The entire camp was instantly filled with shouts of killing. Tavik's guards, who did not know what was happening in the distance and saw the two groups of people fighting together, surrounded the entire tent. They nervously watched the battlefield in front of them, where severed limbs were flying and blood was splashing. Dimitrika swept the long sword in his hand, instantly cutting off the waists of several people in front of him, and the blood splashed on the armor, slowly flowing down. Godwin watched his men suffer heavy losses, and the lizard man was like a god of death. Quickly reducing the number of his own people, he began to panic. Even the regular army in the city would not have such combat power. It was simply a crushing massacre. Seeing the tall lizard man walking towards him, Godwin felt a little weak in his heart. The number of people I've killed is more than you've ever seen. I'm not afraid of you. Godwin held the sword in his hand tightly and roared at the lizard man. With this shout, the fear in his heart instantly diminished a bit. His eyes also became more and more firm. Yes, I have been a mercenary for nearly 30 years, and every time I have crawled out of the tip of a knife. Why should I be afraid of you? Everyone has one life, and when people die, birds face the sky. Godwin danced a sword flower, tapped his feet, and took the initiative to rush towards the lizard man in front. Go to hell, Godwin shouted loudly. Dimitrika looked at the human rushing up, and golden light gradually appeared on the long sword in his hand. I respect your choice. The long sword was swung out, like a golden light slashing down. Godwin looked in shock at the broken long sword in his hand. In the dizzying flip, he saw his headless body. The death of the head of the mercenary group also accelerated the rhythm of the battle. In less than 10 minutes, the battle ended. No one in the Iron Blood mercenary group survived, and were all killed here. The air was filled with a strong smell of blood, which made everyone who was originally tired and hungry lose their appetite. Fang Hao led the others, as if they had bathed in blood, and walked straight towards the area of Tavik. Tavik's guards, their hands holding weapons trembling slightly, were wary of these killing gods in front of them. Mr. Fang, what is this? Tavik asked in a trembling voice. Tavik, do you believe me? Yes, I believe you. You saved my daughter. I believe you. Okay, the Iron Blood mercenary group has colluded with a group of bandits. I don't know the names of the bandits, but their leader is a woman named Gray Bear. They will attack in 10 minutes. Give all your men to my men to command. Fang Hao quickly told the story. Oh, Gray Bear. Tavik quickly recovered from the shock. Hearing the name of Gray Bear, his face became even more ugly. Mr. Fang Hao, are you telling the truth? The leader of the bandits is called Gray Bear. Tavik asked urgently. Gray Bear, a woman. The stronghold is in the east. Quick, quick. Leave here quickly. Tavik hurriedly ordered, preparing to leave directly. Can you run faster than them with the goods? Give your troops to my men to command, and we can survive, and the goods will be safe. Fang Hao stopped the somewhat flustered Tavik. Okay. Everyone will now listen to Mr. Fang Hao's unified command, Tavik said immediately. Now he has no second choice if Fang Hao wanted to kill him. His people would never be a match for the other party. Everyone listened to Dimitrika's unified deployment. Anyone who dares to disobey the command, I will directly chop off his head, Fang Hao said loudly. Dimitrika took a step forward, took off his helmet, and wiped the blood stains on it. He began to explain to everyone the route the enemy would attack, as well as the next arrangement. 20 minutes. The night is deep and strong. Gray Bear led his men and horses to the place where the caravan was stationed. Following the mercenaries, the bandits shuttled through the forest, causing the insect sounds of the past to close their mouths. Tavik is a famous cloth merchant here, and his past business trips are very secretive, making it difficult to find the whereabouts of the caravan. Silk is even called soft gold, and even if it is 30%, they still make a lot of money. Therefore, even though Gray Bear had not been feeling well recently, he still agreed after hearing the news from the Iron Blood mercenary group, who would refuse the fat meat delivered to their mouth. The crowd had already approached the edge of the forest, and as long as they rushed out of this forest, they could see the caravan's camp. Stop! Suddenly, Gray Bear stopped and ordered the team to stop moving forward. What's wrong? Boss Gray Bear. A mercenary braked suddenly and asked Gray Bear curiously. Gray Bear frowned and asked curiously, Are people dead? What dead people? The captain said that he wanted Tavik's head during the battle. The kind that can be recognized, the mercenary said. No, many people just died, and there is a strong smell of blood in front. Sigh. The rest of the people also took a deep breath. No, something must have happened. Be careful, Gray Bear said in a cold voice. Okay, just as a few people were about to move forward, someone else let out a surprised doubt. Hey, why is there such a big fog? Large patches of fog rose up on both the left and right sides at the same time, spreading rapidly and covering everyone. On both sides of the dense forest, large patches of mist suddenly spread, just as Grizzly Bear and the others were frowning and thinking. The mist had already covered the team. The forest was intertwined with roots, and the canopy covered the sky. The late night combined with the mist reduced the bandits' visibility, allowing them to only see about a meter ahead. Boss, the situation isn't looking good, a bandit whispered. Grizzly Bear naturally understood and grabbed the mercenary leading the way beside him, cursing, What's going on? The mercenary was pulled and pushed by Grizzly Bear, his body staggering. He held onto his helmet and said, Boss Grizzly Bear, maybe it's just ordinary mist. Our Iron Blood mercenary group definitely has no other intentions. He didn't know what had happened either. Besides, it was quite normal for mist to rise in the forest. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a rustling sound came from both sides of the team that it seemed like something had rushed out from between the trees. Enemies. Consecutive shouts rang out around the team. Following that were the sounds of fighting and the screams of the bandits. Grizzly Bear's face changed, knowing he had been ambushed. Follow me. After speaking, he advanced towards the sound of fighting, but after only a few steps, the sounds of his own men shouting and killing came from behind him. His team was completely surrounded in the middle and was under siege. Everyone gathered towards me, quickly. Grizzly Bear roared loudly. The people around him moved towards Grizzly Bear following the sound. At the same time, Demetria, Anya, and others also knew the location of the team's leader. The mist simultaneously cast by Demetria and Fang Hao in this windless forest. It played a role far beyond imagination that Demetria's mist dome released mist to obscure vision. while also providing magic resistance and 25% stamina recovery for teammates within the mist and Fang Hao's cloudy mist. After covering the enemy, could directly reduce the enemy's morale by 15% with the two stacked. The entire bandit group instantly fell into chaos when the mist completely enveloped the entire battlefield. Demetria led a team of nearly 100 people through the dense thicket, directly charging towards the bandits on the edge. Like ghosts in the forest, they made no sound. Piercing the enemy like a spear, the bandits wailed and called for help loudly, but the mist obscured their vision, making the remaining bandits tremble with fear upon hearing the sounds. Not daring to run around together, it wasn't until they heard the voice of their leader, Grizzly Bear, that they determined the direction and began to converge towards him. The sounds of shouting and killing from all around became increasingly dense. Demetria flicked the blood off his longsword, his cold vertical pupils looking towards Grizzly Bear's position in the mist. All cleared out. Anya led the team from the other side, meeting up with Demetria. Just now, they had cleared out the people around the bandits at the fastest speed, thereby reducing the enemy's numbers. Okay, prepare for the final battle, Demetria said softly. Everyone reorganized their equipment and tightened their grip on their weapons. Kill. Demetria raised his long sword and took the lead, charging into the depths of the mist towards the location where Grizzly Bear and the others were gathered. Kill. Kill. The team followed closely behind, letting out roars of anger. The two teams collided head-on, engaging in battle within the mist. Grizzly Bear defended with his shield while swinging the battle axe in his hand. This time, he at least knew who his enemy was, but he was still at a disadvantage as the battle continued. Grizzly Bear's men became fewer and fewer. At this point, only just over 20 remained, struggling to hold on. And that tall lizard man on the other side was like a god of slaughter, his swordsmanship reaping the lives of their companions one by one. If this continued, everyone would die here. Boss, we can't hold on, one person said. Grizzly Bear's expression was solemn. He could see the lizardmen's strength if they kept fighting like this. They would all die here. He gritted his teeth, pushed away the enemy in front of him, and roared loudly. Whips out, whips out. The surrounding bandits followed suit and shouted. Immediately after, all the bandits turned and ran. Some directly threw away their weapons and ran into the distance. They fled in all directions, towards different points. Demetria and the others killed the few bandits who were forcibly held back, but could only watch as the others who fled gradually disappeared into the distance. Don't chase them. Clean up the battlefield. We'll set off directly in a while, Tavik said from the back of the team. These bandits were difficult to completely eliminate. They knew the surrounding terrain better than anyone. And once they were defeated in battle, they would scatter and flee in all directions. Listen to Mr. Tavik. Clean up the battlefield. The rest of you start a fire and eat. Everyone can rest on the road. Fang Hao said loudly that it was already dawn at this time. Everyone began to move with tired bodies. Some cleaned up the battlefield, while others started fires and cooked as the sun rose. The team began to set off again. The battle throughout the night had exhausted all the soldiers. But now was not the time to stop and rest. On the edge of the jungle, the bandits who had escaped were still watching from a distance, observing the movements of this team. Fortunately, the Iron Blood mercenary group's men were dead, and the horses were distributed to others, so everyone could rest on the horses, and even take a slight nap in the carriage. Fang Hao yawned repeatedly. Mr. Fang Hao, without you, the fate of the caravan is unimaginable, Tavik said. Even though the matter was over, he still felt a little scared, recalling some of the Iron Blood mercenary group's small actions now. Everything made sense that he had underestimated the greed of the mercenary group. For money, they would even betray their own employers. I'm also a guard for the caravan now. It's what I should do, Fang Hao replied. No, that's two different things. You saved all our lives, Tavik said again. It's nothing. We're friends, helping each other, aren't we? Fang Hao leaned back lazily in his chair. By the way, how much longer until we reach our destination? If we keep rushing like this, the soldiers' stamina won't be able to hold up if there's danger. Soon, the team can't stop. We'll reach Lisis City before dusk. If we stop, we'll have to spend another night in the wilderness, Tavik replied, in a wonder Tavik was in such a hurry to travel. Besides worrying that Grizzly Bear would attack again, he also had to reach Lisis city before dusk. Otherwise, everyone would have to spend the night outside the city, which would be even more dangerous. Okay, the two chatted briefly in the carriage, then leaned back in their chairs and slightly closed their eyes. At dusk, the team finally arrived at the foot of Lisis city. The towering arrow towers and the seemingly endless city walls all proved that this place was more prosperous than Pearl City. A caravan pulling goods, with guards covered in bloodstains, still attracted the attention of the guards. Tavik got out and explained for a long time, and also presented various credentials before the caravan was allowed to enter the city. Everyone was assigned rooms, and there were guards stationed. Fang Hao lay tiredly on the bed and immediately fell into a deep sleep. 2 hours later, a servant woke Fang Hao again. Tavik changed him into noble attire and took him to the city lord's mansion. Night. When the two arrived at the city lord's mansion, the gorgeously decorated hall was already filled with many people, like Tavik. They were well-dressed and well-behaved. They smiled and greeted each other upon meeting, only secretly spitting twice and cursing them as sons of bitches when they passed by. The city lord's wife has arrived. A loud voice from a servant echoed in the hall. With this shout, the hall instantly fell silent, and everyone stopped what they were doing and looked towards the stairs on the second floor. Fang Hao yawned, his eyes scanning around. What's going on? No food. Isn't this a dinner party? From the second floor, a woman with a graceful figure walked out. She was about 30 to 40 years old, but very well maintained. Her wine-red hair was slightly curled and scattered on both sides, and she was wearing a red dress that clung tightly to her body, accentuating her voluptuous figure. A smile appeared on her face as she walked down the stairs. The city lord of Lexus must not be in good health, Fang Hao concluded in his heart as he watched the city lord's wife slowly descend. But thinking about it, that didn't seem right either. One could rely on potions to change their physical fitness. Lexus City was so big, buying some potions to supplement the body shouldn't be a problem. In that case, the city lord was enjoying a good life. Has everyone arrived? The city lord's wife asked. Her gaze swept across the crowd, eventually landing on Fang Hao in the corner. Everyone else had their heads lowered, but he was looking directly at her. Realizing that his gaze had been noticed, Fang Hao smiled awkwardly and pretended to admire the decorations in the hall. Madam, everyone has arrived, a servant replied softly. The city lord's wife walked to the front of the hall, gracefully stepped onto the high platform, and said to the crowd below, before winter arrives, I will represent Lexus in the Federal Assembly. You are the city's renowned cloth merchants. I hope you can present satisfactory works. Similarly, the selected cloth merchant will be exempt from taxes for 1 year. As soon as the city lord's wife finished speaking, all the cloth merchants below revealed eager expressions. Whether it was presenting a work that satisfied the city lord's wife or having a 1-year tax exemption within the city, it was an important matter for merchants doing business in the city that if the city lord's wife wore their dress to attend the assembly, it would be an advertisement for them. Their business would be secure for the next few years. It was also possible that their shop would become famous in other cities, expanding their business further. All right, let's begin. You don't want to be delayed until midnight before you can go back to rest, do you? The city lord's wife said. Let's begin with the first Weston cloth shop. The servant announced that a man with a large belly walked out with a smile, presenting his design drafts and the prepared clothing samples. Madam Rebecca, this is our latest dress design, Rose Knight. The materials used are, the man spoke eloquently, from the raw materials to his design concept. He even explained the meaning contained in the name, turning the predominantly red garment into a lengthy story. Following that, the second shop came on stage. This was a somewhat effeminate man who swayed his hips as he walked. If he didn't have a mustache, Fang Hao would have thought he was a woman in disguise. After the effeminate man finished his presentation, the city lord's wife nodded unconsciously, seemingly somewhat satisfied. Then came the third, the fourth, each presenting their designs in turn. Choosing a dress requires such a big display. Fang Hao asked softly, covering his stomach. It was like a commercial bidding process, just to choose a dress. These people really had nothing better to do. All the cloth merchants prepare every year. If they are chosen, their business can double in the next few years, Tavik whispered in explanation. Selecting a dress had become a tradition for the cloth merchants. Even if they were not selected today, they would immediately start preparing for next year, hoping to win back what they had lost in one fell swoop. This had also become the focus of comparison among the cloth merchants. Sales were no longer important. Being recognized by Madame Rebecca had become the industry's goal as long as Madame Rebecca made her choice. The ladies and socialites of various influential circles would come to this shop that year. Business would double. Have you ever been selected? Fang Hao asked curiously. Still working hard, still working hard. Tavik said, wiping his sweat. What about this year? We risked our lives to come here. You are the hope of the whole village. Tavik's sweat became even more profuse. I'll do my best, I'll do my best. Seeing this, Fang Hao knew it was hopeless. After seeing the first few designs, Tavik had already lost confidence in himself that it seemed that this year would also be just a participation award. Soon, it was Tavik's turn. He walked up with his work and his attendants, and began to present the dress he had designed for the city lord's wife. The combination of brown and blue, the corset and the puffy skirt, were quite beautiful, but all the works were similar, only making different modifications in color, embroidery, and lace. There were no bold breakthroughs, until Tavik bowed and walked back. The city lord's wife did not show any expression, and continued to watch the next cloth merchant's presentation. How was it? Fang Hao asked. Try harder next year. Tavik sighed. Fang Hao thought for a moment and said, Can you draw that design draft? He was referring to the design draft in the cloth merchant's hand, outlining the figure and the shape of the clothes on paper. Yes. Then draw one for me. My shop also wants to participate, Fang Hao said. You also have a shop. Just established, called Bonecloth Art Shop. Hurry. Follow what I say. The two put their heads together. Tavik opened his toolbox and began to draw according to Fang Hao's description. Time passed little by little. On the stone platform, Madame Rebecca looked at the cloth merchants below, but she was somewhat disappointed. These were all well-known cloth merchants in the city and surrounding cities, but none of them could produce a work that satisfied her. She needed to represent Lexus City in the assembly, which was also the time to highlight the city's development and compete for benefits. Wearing clothes seemed to be just a superficial comparison, but in reality, it was the best way to show the development status of a city in any occasion. A person's first impression was particularly important, but the designs submitted by these people this year were no different from those in previous years, stacking up some precious fabrics and adding a gorgeous and slightly meaningful story. It was the same every year, and even though she was used to it, she was still somewhat disappointed. Just as Rebecca was about to choose one that was passable, she suddenly saw two people in the crowd whispering to each other with their heads lowered. It was that young man who had just looked directly at her. Now that everyone was looking up at the presentation on the stage, what was he studying with his head down? Why did he always behave in the opposite way to others? When the last cloth merchant finished his presentation and walked down, everyone looked at the city lord's wife, waiting for her to choose the selected cloth shop for today. Under everyone's gaze, the city lord's wife pointed her finger. Are you also a cloth merchant? Do you have any works? Everyone followed the direction of her finger and saw Fang Hao just raising his head. Fang Hao cleared his throat and pinched his fingers in an orchid gesture, saying in a clipped voice, City lord's wife, I am a cloth merchant, and I have also brought today's work. Originally, he wanted to go up and present his work normally, but after discovering that the city lord's wife had nodded unconsciously after two somewhat effeminate men finished their presentations, Fang Hao temporarily decided to abandon his dignity and sacrifice himself for art. If that's why he showed this kind of behavior. Since you are also a cloth merchant, come up and talk about it. You don't want to go back like this, do you? Rebecca said. Yes, city lord's wife. Fang Hao walked out while twisting his waist, holding his design draft. His movements were exaggerated, making everyone unable to look directly at him. Only Fang Hao himself was getting more and more into the act. Gently waving his orchid fingers, Fang Hao stepped onto the stone platform and took out his design draft. The design draft used a 4-panel layout that involves dividing a piece of paper vertically into two halves. The left side features the overall clothing design, while the right side is equally divided into 3 smaller sections. The first section is for jewelry, necklaces, and earrings. The second is for belts and ornaments. And the third is for stockings and high heels. Presenting the drawing to everyone, Rebecca raised her eyebrows, finally seeing something different from the past. Ahem. Clothing is never singular. It's like a person's face. If you give them nice features but pair them with a ridiculous mustache, it will look strange. Umph. A cold snort came from the audience, and more people chuckled to themselves. So, I've made an overall match, from the dress to the jewelry. Even the stockings and shoes, all match to enhance 1/3 of Madame Rebecca's beauty, Fang Hao said eloquently. The clothing on the design drawing, unlike others, did not use a wide, floor-length skirt. The design is relatively bold. A blue off-the-shoulder dress, with an asymmetrical front and back hem design, further highlighting the woman's long legs and the sense of layering. From the front, it's a short skirt that only reaches the root of the thigh, exposing the entire thigh, while the back is an irregularly spliced patterned skirt, directly reaching the floor and extending behind her. The whole place was silent. Everyone stared wide-eyed at the design displayed by the strange man on the stage. This is no longer a question of whether it looks good or not. You're letting the city lord's wife wear such a short skirt, shorter than the women making a living in the tavern. What does this mean? Go and bring that bronze mirror over here, Fang Hao said to a servant beside him. The latter glanced at the city lord's wife, and seeing her nod slightly, brought the bronze mirror from the corner. Madame Rebecca, please stand in front of the mirror, Fang Hao said. Rebecca was actually a little tempted, after all. This was the most innovative and bold design she had ever seen. In Fang Hao's affected voice, she couldn't help but stand up and walk to the opposite side of the bronze mirror. Fang Hao smiled slightly, placing the design draft to the side, allowing Rebecca to see herself in the mirror and also see the design draft in her hand, introducing them one by one. The neckline uses a strapless off-the-shoulder design, which can accentuate the bony collarbone and your beautiful necklines. The design draft was placed on the waist again. Here, the waist is cinched in, which can fully show your graceful figure. Continuing to place it on the leg position. Madam, the hem design is enough to outline your sexy curves. I have been engaged in clothing design for so many years, and I have never seen such a beautiful leg shape as yours. A series of explicit praises made Rebecca's whole body feel a little hot. How could this young man be so eloquent, praising her whole body in front of so many people? Taking a deep breath, Rebecca sat back in her seat, starting to think, in recent years, there has indeed been no breakthrough in dress design. Even if they were allowed to design for another 2 years, I'm afraid they would still come up with those styles. Looking around at everyone, her gaze finally fell on Fang Hao. What's your name? Fang Hao, Madame Rebecca, Fang Hao said in his affected voice. Are you also a cloth merchant? What's the name of your shop? Bone Fabric Shop. Everyone was stunned. What kind of name was that? It didn't sound like a business for the living. Okay, this year we'll go with your Bone Fabric Shop. But the length of the skirt needs to be lengthened, Rebecca said. The expressions of all the cloth merchants in the audience were somewhat helpless. They had actually lost to a suddenly emerging kid. They lost without any complaints. The other party's design did have some flaws, but they could all be modified later. But overall, it was more innovative and bolder than theirs. It didn't matter that they lost this time. They also learned a new layout method and bold skirt design from the other party. They would use it themselves next year. And by then, these would be theirs. Okay, Madame Rebecca, some details can still be discussed at that time, Fang Hao said. Rebecca nodded slightly and said, Okay, the person from the Bone Fabric Shop, stay here. The rest of you can go back first. Your business will still operate normally in the city, so there's no need to worry about that. Yes, Madame Rebecca. The others saluted and left the hall. Even Tavik exited the hall, waving to him at the door, indicating that he would wait for him at the door. Inside the hall, only Fang Hao and Rebecca remained, along with a few female servants. How long has your fabric shop been in business? Rebecca asked. A century-old shop, immortal inheritance, Fang Hao replied softly, his voice a little uncomfortable. Which city do you live in? I haven't heard of it before. Rebecca continued to ask, somewhat interested in the young man in front of her. He didn't have the flattery of a businessman. and he was also unfamiliar with the rules here. North of Pearl City. This is also my first time coming to Lysithia with the cloth merchant Tavik, Fang Hao said truthfully. Rebecca nodded and continued. I am very satisfied with the design of the clothing. As for the remaining jewelry and the white stockings, do I need to contact a jeweler to make them? Fang Hao offered a complete package, a head-to-toe makeover. The clothing could be decided, but what about the rest? Time waits for no one. No, I will complete all of these. Madam Rebecca only needs to provide me with detailed body measurements. And I will also provide the jewelry and stockings. Fang Hao directly took all the matters upon himself. This made Rebecca even more surprised, emphasizing, Are you sure you can complete all of these? Of course, I wouldn't joke with you about this here. Okay, then come over tomorrow morning. I'll give you the data then. I hope you won't disappoint me, Rebecca said solemnly. Fang Hao smiled and nodded. Watching Rebecca go up to the second floor, walking out of the city lord's mansion, Tavik was still waiting outside the door. How was it? Did you close the deal? Tavik asked anxiously. It's settled. I'll come tomorrow to get the measurements, Fang Hao said as he walked out. You actually succeeded. Oh my God. The two got into the carriage and headed towards their residence together, but on the way, Tavik kept muttering about some details in the design drawing. The next day, morning. After lunch, Fang Hao came to the city lord's mansion again. After stating his intentions, a maid led him directly to the second floor. The maid gently knocked on the door. Madam, Mr. Fang Hao has arrived. Let him in, please. Sir. The maid opened the door, signaling Fang Hao to enter, walking into the room. Golden wheat on sprinkled onto the floor from the window in the center of the room. On a gray-blue sofa lay Rebecca, completely naked, with a blue blanket covering the important parts of her body, and beside the sofa leaned a half-finished, unpainted oil painting. Seeing Fang Hao's gaze a little direct, Rebecca's brow furrowed instantly. Ahem. Madam Rebecca, this kind of routine is very easy to cause wrinkles. If you want to keep your skin young, you must rest on time, Fang Hao said in his affected voice, twisting his waist as he walked in. Rebecca's brow relaxed again, and she lay on the sofa and stretched greatly. Fang Hao walked into the room and sat down on a chair nearby. He sat up straight, his hands clasped on his thighs. He was playing the part of a more effeminate person, while openly looking at the plump, fair skin in front of him, which was as white as a young girl's. You also research skin. Rebecca turned around, her long hair cascading down, revealing her pointed ears. Fang Hao's heart skipped a beat. Elf? An elf being in power in a human city was truly beyond Fang Hao's expectations. But these things had little to do with him. He was just a passing cloth merchant. It's not really research, but skin needs maintenance. Keeping the skin well hydrated, and, most importantly, maintaining a regular sleep schedule is crucial. Fang Hao recalled the facial mask commercials he'd seen on television. Haha, it seems you know quite a lot. Rebecca smiled slightly. Just some scattered, useless knowledge. Fang Hao smiled faintly. Madam, regarding the measurements. Rebecca got up and casually wrapped the blue blanket around her body. Last night I thought about it, and it's better if you take the measurements yourself. After all, this dress is very different from previous types. Rebecca was very particular about the dress. The selected fabric store in the city would receive a year of tax exemption, the purpose of which was to encourage those fabric stores to constantly innovate to design even more outstanding dresses. But for several years, no work had appeared that satisfied her. Fang Hao's design was the first to break the inherent concept of the dress. Okay. Fang Hao stood up and took out his measuring tools. These tools were borrowed from Tavik. The initial thought was to make himself look more professional, but he didn't expect Rebecca to need him to measure in person. He took out the tape measure and approached Rebecca. The blue blanket was wrapped just below her armpits, seemingly tied to her prominent breasts, the cleavage clearly visible. Madam, please raise your arms, Fang Hao said softly. Rebecca raised her arms, and Fang Hao wrapped the tape measure around her chest, applying a slight pressure, which created a rounded indentation. Fang Hao then turned around and jotted down the values one by one on a piece of paper nearby. Rebecca exuded two conflicting temperaments. Her identity as the city lord's wife, coupled with her indifferent expression, gave people a sense of dignity, elegance, and even a hint of coldness. But her figure and appearance were also beautiful and mature. Fang Hao recorded all the measurements. And Rebecca sat back down. When can I see the template? Rebecca asked. The formation of a garment requires several steps. It also requires several fittings. I will try to give you a fitting within a week. But the journey is not short, so it might take up to 2 weeks. Fang Hao calculated the time in his mind and replied. Okay, Rebecca continued. Haven't you considered opening a store in the city? With your ideas, you might be welcomed in aristocratic circles. I am considering it, but I have just arrived in Lich's city, and I am not familiar with some of the rules and procedures. It will probably take some time to open a store. Lich's city is not like Pearl City, where there is only one commercial street. There is no need for market research. As long as you open a store on this street, it is the best location. But Lich's city is several times larger than Pearl City. With a larger population, and both commoners and nobles live in the city. To open a store, one really needs to investigate thoroughly. Of course, stores must be opened, hot pot restaurants. And this fabric store as well. It just needs to be carefully planned. You don't need to worry about that. As long as you can complete this dress according to the design, I can help you with the store, and the reward is still valid. A year of tax exemption, Rebecca said with a smile. As the city lord's wife, she could still decide on this matter. Supporting a store in such a large city is not a big deal, not even a small one. Then I thank you very much, Madam Rebecca, Fang Hao said gratefully. The two continued to chat, making some adjustments to the details of the dress. It wasn't until Fang Hao left that Rebecca leaned back on the sofa again and fell into a groggy sleep. Walking out of the city lord's mansion, Fang Hao squeezed his throat. Outside the gate, Anya saw Fang Hao come out and went up to meet him. If you didn't come out, I would have rushed in. Not necessarily. We were just discussing some normal things. The two walked out. Fang Hao finally didn't have to speak in a strained voice anymore. Tavik said he would return to Pearl tomorrow morning. So he asked you to settle anything you need to today? Anya said, following behind him. Okay, where to now? Let's check out the tavern here, Fang Hao said. Lich's is very prosperous, with roads wide enough for carriages to travel side by side in the center and shops lining both sides, which were now open for business, and in some open spaces on both sides. There were also many vendors, some displaying their goods on mats, while others carried their goods and loudly hawked them. Fang Hao and Anya stopped in front of a tavern on the street. They pushed the door open and walked straight in. This time. There were already many drinkers in the shop, drinking and chatting and bragging. Fang Hao sat down at the counter, his gaze falling directly on the notice board nearby. There were several bounties written densely on it, but not a single map of adventure locations. The content of the bounties was mostly about trivial matters in the city. What would you like to drink? The tavern owner asked. Beer, please. Do you have any specialties? 2 small dishes, please. Fang Hao said it was a good place to solve their lunch problem. Sirs, our steamed chicken and meatballs are very popular here. If you want to take some away, I recommend you buy some smoked ham. The taste will definitely satisfy you. The owner estimated their appetites and introduced the dishes. Okay, then we'll have the steamed chicken and meatballs, and prepare a portion of smoked ham for us to take away. They were leaving tomorrow morning, so taking some smoked ham to eat on the road was also a good idea. All right, I'll prepare it for you right away, the owner said with a smile. Soon, the beer and meatballs were served. Only the steamed chicken was still being prepared in the back kitchen. Boss, Fang Hao called out softly. Guest, what can I do for you? The boss walked over with a smile. Don't you have any single-page maps, like the strongholds discovered by some merchant caravans along the way? Fang Hao asked. We usually do, but recently, with cloth merchants coming from various places, Madam Rebecca ordered the clearing of some dangers along the way. So the map pages were taken down. The clearing wasn't very thorough, was it? He had been threatened by Grey Bear's group of bandits along the way. Of course, Grey Bear hadn't originally intended to rob Tavik's caravan, but was instigated by the Iron Blood mercenary group. In the end, Fang Hao had killed many of their people instead. Oh, just as Fang Hao was about to speak again, a dull thud came from the side. Looking back, he saw an old man who had knocked over his chair, one foot resting on the fallen chair, rolling up his sleeve. Look, this is the mark left when a vampire bit me back then. The old man was disheveled and reeked of alcohol, rolling up his sleeve to show the few people at the same table. Hunch, You're just bragging. Vampires bite necks, not arms, and besides, that mark on you is probably from not washing. Can vampire teeth even leave patterns? A drinker looked at his arm and said loudly. The few people nearby also burst into laughter. Hodge looked at his arm and muttered, I haven't washed for too long. I can't see it. Uffed. He spat on his arm and began to rub it vigorously. All right, don't disgust us. We believe you, okay? Continue telling your story, starting from when you didn't die and killed the vampire with a silver needle, a drinker nearby said, quietly moving away from him. Old Hodge helped the chair back up, sat down again, and said, the silver needle pierced the vampire's neck. And guess what? What happened? I clearly saw that the pierced area didn't heal that quickly. Blood flowed from the wound. And I cut off its head from excessive bleeding, Old Hodge said. Didn't you just say you killed it with one sword thrust? How did you cut off its head now? Is that right? Well, I drank too much. I can't quite remember, but anyway. I discovered that vampires are afraid of silver, so I designed silver cone-shaped arrows, which must be effective for killing vampires. Did you use them later? Of course I used them. The current status of the human race is largely due to my efforts. All right, I'll thank you on behalf of humanity. The others also burst into laughter. Fang Hao, while eating the steamed chicken that had been served, asked curiously, did he really kill a vampire? The owner looked at Old Hodge. Does he look like he's killed a vampire? If killing mosquitoes counts, then he probably has. After finishing lunch, the two left the tavern with the packed smoked ham and returned to their lodging. The next day, Tabak's caravan left Lich's city and began its journey back. This time, they didn't encounter any trouble on the way. After 2 days of travel, the team arrived at Pearl City, Rose Tavern. Fang Hao sat at the bar, his expression a little serious. There were many new faces in the tavern today. Those people sitting in the corners of the shop, wearing robes and hoods. Pale blood, tier 3. From the blood race. This name couldn't help but make one think of vampires. What's their deal? Fang Hao subtly gestured towards the location of the pale-blooded individuals. Not sure. They arrived this afternoon. They even wear hats in broad daylight. The proprietress replied in a low voice without looking away. The pale-blooded individuals had arrived a little earlier than Fang Hao, so they were practically right behind him. What are they here for? Fang Hao continued to inquire. I don't know. They just asked me about the undead in the north. It scared me to death, the proprietress said, patting her chest. Ever since the mercenaries died in the shop last time, although the city lord said it was done by the Fire Wolf mercenary group, there were still some rumors that they had offended the undead in the north and were all killed as a result. Now, every time the proprietress heard about the undead, her heart would tremble. The shop had just reopened, and then suddenly a bunch of strange people appeared, even asking about the undead. They aren't heretics, are they? Acting so mysterious. Possibly. They had a bloody smell on them when they were close. Don't ever interact with them. Heretics are all crazy. The proprietress continued to wipe the empty wine glasses in her hand. Fang Hao stroked his chin, his gaze occasionally sweeping towards those people. Vampires. And they were asking about the undead. That it seemed the vampires had received news about the blood hunters turning into skeletons, but they hadn't directly launched an attack. So it was highly likely they received the information through a third-party channel and didn't understand the undead territory themselves. These people should just be scouts or spies. Are they staying here? Sitting there so coldly, it really affects business, Fang Hao said again. Originally, taverns were lively places, and even if someone sang or got drunk and wild, everyone would cheer along. But now, with these people standing there, the whole tavern had become quiet. Business had already been slow these past few days, overshadowed by Fang Hao's restaurant, and now with these people here, it felt even more deserted. I asked, they aren't staying here. They'll leave when the city gates close at night, the proprietress said again. All right then. As Fang Hao spoke, he estimated the timing of these people's actions. He had gathered enough information about the pale-blooded individuals. So Fang Hao's gaze fell back on the notice board. During the few days he was away, 2 bounties had appeared, while monster and peripheral danger. Bounty. While monster. Task. Eliminate the monster appearing in the well. Requirement. None. Reward. 5 gold coins. The reward was 5 gold coins. That was too little. not to mention the possibility of casualties in combat. Even the cost of mobilizing troops would exceed the reward amount. He continued to look at the second one. Village trouble. Task: solve the village's trouble. Requirement: none. Reward: 15 gold coins. This one didn't even specify the task. And the reward wasn't much either. These two bounties. They offer so little, and you still post them, Fang Hao said. Looking at the proprietress again, the tavern charged a fee to post bounties. The reward money wasn't even enough to cover the tavern's fee. It's a bounty posted by a nearby village. If we can help, we help. What can we do? The proprietress said helplessly. Doesn't the city lord's mansion manage this? If they did, they wouldn't have come to the tavern to post a bounty. This Pural city, it's getting worse year by year. The proprietress sighed helplessly. Where are these two villages located? Tell me, and I'll go take a look when I have time, Fang Hao said. Okay. The proprietress pointed out the locations on the map for Fang Hao. After chatting with the proprietress for a while, Tavik arranged for someone to deliver the promised holy snow silkworm larvae. There were 100 in total, which he could take back for cultivation. This number was the maximum Tavik could provide, and Fang Hao didn't say much. He still needed to purchase high-quality fabrics from Tavik for the production of his dress. Fortunately, he had to produce the sample he promised Rebecca within a week so she could try it on. After exchanging a few words with the proprietress, he went to the shop to instruct Little Bai and the others not to go out wandering at night and to be careful. Then he rode the giant lizard back to the territory. By the time the three returned to the city, it was already late. Master, you're back. Eeyore came out to greet them with a group of maids. Fang Hao knew they were worried and smiled. It's all right. This trip went very smoothly. He handed the box containing the silkworm larvae to Eeyore. Eeyore, these are the holy snow silkworm larvae. Take them to the silkworm breeding room. Oh, okay. Eeyore carefully took it and walked towards the silkworm breeding room. Jia followed Eeyore, discussing what to eat for dinner. Demeter was about to leave, but was called back by Fang Hao. Demeter. Master, what are your orders? Demeter asked. Some pale-blooded individuals have arrived in the city. They are scouts from the blood race, and they might come to the territory tonight to gather information. Be prepared with the blood hunters, and kill these people as soon as you discover their tracks, Fang Hao said directly. Living people were not very useful to him. Only dead people could demonstrate their value. Yes, Master. Demeter agreed and walked towards the outside of the city. Demeter left, and Fang Hao also returned to the Lord's Hall. He sat down to the side and said to the maid, Call Sawyer, Kulin, and Luke. Yes, Master. Before long, the skeleton tailor Sawyer, the blacksmith Kulin, and the goldsmith Luke walked in one after another. Fang Hao gestured for the three of them to sit at the wooden table. This is an order I secured in Lysis City. We need to divide the work among us. The design drawing was placed on the table for the three of them to pass around and look at. Master, this dress is designed exceptionally well. I wonder which master's hand it came from, Sawyer said, full of praise as he looked at the design drawing. Oh dear, there's no master. I just casually put it together, and I didn't expect the city lord's wife of Lysis City to take a liking to it, which is why she placed the order with us, Fang Hao said calmly. This stocking, she also approved of it? Sawyer asked, looking at the stocking on the design drawing. In terms of stockings, Fang Hao and Sawyer had a big disagreement. Sawyer believed that using holy snow silk to make stockings was a waste. They had argued several times. And even now, with the stockings being approved by the other party, he still couldn't quite understand. Approved. I've even gotten the city lord's wife's body measurements. See if there's anything you can achieve. Fang Hao looked at the three of them. The three of them placed the design drawing on the table and gathered around to examine it carefully. Actually, Fang Hao was also a bit unsure. He had just thought of it casually and had the design draft made. If it couldn't be completed, that would be embarrassing. Although he hadn't left Rebecca any collateral, it would be difficult to develop in Lysis City in the future. He would definitely be labeled a swindler. Just as he breathed a sigh of relief, the skeleton merchant Dujin walked in. He bowed and said, Lord, the response to the Merchant Alliance order you placed last time has been received. These are the blueprints received. Dujin handed over a building blueprint. Hearing this news made Fang Hao happy. He took the blueprint and saw the blueprint information. Megalithic tomb. Megalithic tomb. Blue hardwood 1200. Stone 3500. Stone bricks 4000. Leather 500. Rope 450. Cast iron blocks 200. Metal parts 120. Shadow stone 5. Description: in this megalithic tomb buried deep underground, it is now filled with noisy and violent undead. It seemed to be quite a powerful troop building. Master, the new orders have been issued. If you need anything, you can go to the Merchant Alliance to fill out a new order, Dujin said again. Orders were replenished every 7 days. 2 at a time. During the days he had been away, it was time to replenish the orders. Okay, I understand. Then, I won't disturb you. Master. Dujin bowed and withdrew, and Fang Hao also walked out of the Lord's mansion and began to build the newly acquired megalithic tomb. Fang Hao headed straight for the Undead zone. The conversion ground was still operating day and night. Converting the corpses from the battle 2 days prior, he chose an empty spot and directly selected the build option that a blue light illuminated, slowly constructing a mausoleum beneath his feet. When the light faded, the entrance to an underground mausoleum appeared before Fang Hao, built entirely of stone. The dark entrance led deep underground. Megalithic mausoleum. Category: building recruitable. Tomb guard. Tomb guard for wriggling spines. Description: within this deeply buried megalithic mausoleum, it is now filled with boisterous and violent undead. Upgrade prerequisite: Lord's Stone Castle. Upgrade required: 2200 tough wood, 5500 stone, 5000 stone bricks, 1000 leather, 950 ropes, 400 cast iron blocks, 220 metal parts, 2 traces of death, 10 shadow stone. The prerequisite for the building upgrade was the Lord's Stone Castle. Currently, the Lord's Mansion's level was called the Lord's Stone Building. If things went as expected, the next level would be the Lord's Stone Castle, allowing for further upgrades. The recruitable unit was the Tomb Guard, which didn't sound like a regular army, guards tombs, but from the cost of 4 wriggling spines, it could be inferred that it was a Tier 4 unit. This was also the highest tiered unit among the buildings of Fang Hao's own faction. Let's recruit 1-2. Test. He selected the quantity 1 and chose to recruit. Hundredfold increase triggered. Recruiting 101 tomb guards. Clatter. 101 tall skeletons, clad in rotten robes, appeared before Fang Hao. These skeletons had very large frames. The skeletons of the skeleton warriors he had recruited before were about the same height as Fang Hao, around 1.8 meters. But the tomb guards before him were half a head taller than Fang Hao. Tomb guard, Tier 4, faction, undead racial traits, undead, hollow skeleton, light weakness. Skills, cleave, armor shattered, fixed skills, advanced strength mastery, intermediate defense mastery, intermediate two-handed sword mastery. Cleave, cleaves adjacent units, increasing physical damage by 100%, with a chance to cause knockdown. Armor shatter. This unit deals extra damage to non-living armor, shields. Armor. Description: they were powerful warriors in life or awakened, wielding massive weapons, tirelessly hacking at targets. Even the strongest enemies could not escape death. They appeared, the greatsword units. Fang Hao even began to suspect that these tomb guards were the heavy sword infantry after death. Even in the description, they were praised quite highly. Perhaps the former Heavy Sword Legion had achieved numerous military victories in this world. Similarly, the appearance of the two-handed sword unit also resolved Fang Hao's long-standing concern. That was the issue of Demeter's command. Demeter had command, bonuses for heavy sword units, and the ability to make the Legion invisible. Combined, they could be quite powerful. Before the tomb guards appeared, he had been thinking of letting Demeter command the human heavy sword infantry. When ambushing the grisly mountain bandits in the dense forest, Fang Hao discovered a serious problem. It was very difficult for human units to achieve the completely still state under tactical disguise. Demeter could. In that state, he didn't even blink, but the human legion couldn't do it. They could endure for a short time, but once it exceeded 10 minutes, if someone in the legion scratched their butt, the invisible state would be broken. Therefore, in the battle that night, they were ambushed far away in the dense forest and did not use tactical disguise. Now, the appearance of the tomb guards perfectly solved this problem. These waiting skeletons were as motionless as stone statues. Not to mention maintaining it for a few dozen minutes. Even maintaining it for a month would be no problem. This was considered a solution to the problem. Regarding Demeter's units, Fang Hao continued to open the Lord's Book to craft the storm armor set and white steel greatswords. For the tomb guards, after all the preparations, he sent them outside to be arranged by Blood Hunter, Knight at 1,000 meters outside the territory. Several figures were hiding in the darkness, observing the territory from afar. From time to time, they would take out paper and pen and record the information they had scouted, roughly record the positions of the checkpoints and the number of units. One oversight, and we'll lose our lives. Captain, the Duke wants us to investigate young Master Giovanni and who the leader here is, but there are too many undead here. We can't get close at all. Wait a little longer, we still have plenty of time. If we stake out here for a few more days, I don't believe the leader here won't come out. If we scout out valuable information this time, we can become true bloodkin. Upon mentioning becoming bloodkin, the eyes of the faint-blooded individuals all became fervent. Okay, we'll listen to the captain. All right, you go east, you go west. Remember not to alarm those skeletons. We'll meet here in the morning and return to that tavern in Purr City to organize the intelligence. Yes. After speaking, the few people quickly dispersed, heading in different directions. On the branch, a skeleton gray sparrow watched the direction the few people left, the sole fire in its pupils extinguished, and it flew into the sky, heading towards the territory. Fang Hao sat up from the bed, rubbing his temples. These bloodkin were really hard to find in the dark. If it weren't for the few people chatting, Fang Hao was afraid he would have had a hard time discovering them. He rolled out of bed and walked out of the room. In the hall, Demeter, Anya, and Blood Hunter waited silently, seeing Fang Hao walk downstairs. They stood up and asked, "Sir, have you found any trace of those bloodkin?" "I found them. There are a total of 5 people. 2 are on the south side, roughly at this position. The other 3 are at these 2 positions respectively. The 3 of you ride the bone dragons and bring all of them back. Not one can escape." Fang Hao pointed out the positions on the map to the 3. "Yes, sir." The 3 mounted their bone dragons and flew towards the directions they had chosen. 20 minutes later, on the floor of the hall lay 4 corpses and 1 faint-blooded individual, trembling all over. "You're quite lucky. The other 4 are dead, but you alone survived. It's just that I don't know if you understand how to cherish this kind of luck." Fang Hao stood in front of the faint-blooded individual and said softly. The faint-blooded individual raised his head, and his pupils suddenly contracted when he saw Fang Hao. He had seen this human during the day and had some impression of him in the tavern. "If you swear to let me go, I can tell you anything you want to know." The faint-blooded individual was unexpectedly calm, and naturally knew why Fang Hao had kept him alive. It was good now. The other 4 were dead, and he was the only one alive. The desired information could only be obtained from his mouth. This was his bargaining chip, and he naturally had to make good use of it. "The Hamilton family sent you?" Fang Hao asked the faint-blooded individual. The other party's expression remained unchanged. Still silent, he looked as if he wouldn't reveal any information unless Fang Hao agreed to his terms. "You are the first person who dares to negotiate with the undead." Fang Hao didn't know whether to praise his bravery or his foolishness. This moment, the sound of a bone dragon landing came from outside the door. Blackthorn walked in with large strides. Heijin, clad in heavy armor and with a black iron knight's sword at his waist, strode forward, bowed, and asked, "My lord, you called for me?" "Yes, I caught a few Blood Clan scouts near the territory today. They've been killed. You can interrogate them," Fang Hao said, pointing to the 4 corpses laid out in the center. "Understood, my lord." Heijin stepped forward to examine the bodies and then said, "My lord, I will need 8 living creatures." "All right." In the open space outside the hall, Heijin drew complex runes beneath the corpses. 2 horned sheep were brought to the runes and bled. The dark red blood, as if guided, flowed towards the already dead bodies. The next second, the corpses sat upright. The only surviving pale blood nearby collapsed to the ground, his face full of terror. Undead things were too frightening. The corpse sat up, its eyes filled with confusion. Heijin looked at it and said, You are dead. Now, you will answer whatever I ask. All right. Where are you from? What are you here to do? We are scouts from the Hamilton family, here to investigate the disappearance of young Master Giovanni. As soon as it spoke, the pale blood's body began to swell at a visible rate. Heijian's interrogation speed quickened. How many of you came in total? Did you send any messages out? 5 people. No, we haven't sent. Bang. The pale blood's body exploded instantly. Heijian didn't stop, continuing to draw the second set of runes. After 2 more living creatures were bled, the second corpse sat up again. Where is the Hamilton family located? How did you get the information that Giovanni was here? The territory ruled by the Hamilton family is called Moonlit Highlands. I don't know where the information came from. So, the news of Giovanni wasn't discovered by your scouts, but obtained through other means? Yes. How many combat personnel does the Hamilton family have at its disposal? Unclear, perhaps tens of thousands. Bang. This pale blood also exploded again. Afterward, Heijian continued to interrogate the remaining 2 corpses. He gained some understanding of Moonlit Highlands and the Hamilton family. Moonlit Highlands was a territory ruled by the Blood Clan, with large areas of affiliated villages below it, whose inhabitants, besides laboring, served as the Blood Clan's reserve food supply. They had to pay a blood tax on time, and some would even be taken away and kept in blood cellars. Specifically to supply the Blood Clan with blood, these pale bloods lived relatively better lives. Because they were needed to serve the Blood Clan, they weren't exploited as heavily. He also learned that the patriarch of the Hamilton family was a Red Duke. The pale blood couldn't state the Red Duke's rank, but it was confirmed to be an Orange-tier hero. He was also the creator of the Moonlit Highlands system. After hearing the news, Fang Hao sat back down. Fortunately, the Blood Clan's first reconnaissance was discovered by him, and the message hadn't been sent out before he eliminated them. An Orange-tier Blood Clan hero. To be honest, Fang Hao wasn't too worried. The Blood Clan specialized in blood-sucking, transforming humans, and manipulating corpses. Blood-sucking shouldn't pose much threat to skeletons, right? It shouldn't be so powerful as to suck bone marrow, right? All right, clean this up. Kill this one and throw it into the transformation pool. Fang Hao continued. He had no intention of keeping the remaining living pale blood. He hadn't killed him earlier, thinking of letting Xiao Yu use him for a similar disguise and reconnaissance as last time. But upon learning that the opponent was Orange-tier, Fang Hao dismissed the idea that Orange-tier heroes all had their unique abilities, and their strength was immense. If Xiao Yu were discovered, she wouldn't even have a chance to escape, so there was no need to take that risk. The surviving pale blood tried to beg for mercy or say something, but just as he opened his mouth, a long sword pierced his body. Blood flowed from his chest, and his life rapidly drained away. He collapsed weakly, feeling himself being dragged away and thrown among a pile of corpses. The next day, it was overcast and gloomy in the morning. Fang Hao woke up in the morning and walked out of his room. The maids had already started their work, and was preparing breakfast. Everything was as usual. After breakfast, Fang Hao took on Jia and Dimitja and set off again. Arriving at the south side of the territory, this area was located between the territory and Per City, with a river more than 3 meters wide blocking the road, requiring passage over a wooden bridge. However, the river wasn't deep and the current wasn't swift, so one could also wade across. Fang Hao opened his lord's book and found the blueprint for construction that he chose to build by the wooden bridge on the north side of the river. Light rose, and when it dispersed again, the fortress had already been built. Dozens of meters of extended city walls occupied the riverbank, and from now on, this would become a checkpoint leading to his territory. Whoosh! Several bone dragons descended from the sky. 50 Minotaur warriors dismounted from their backs and quickly approached Fang Hao. Greetings, Lord, the Minotaurs saluted. Terry, you've grown much stronger recently, Fang Hao said to the leading Minotaur. These Minotaurs were all members of Bronze Bull's tribe, and Fang Hao knew the leading Minotaur. His name was Terry, an 8th-tier Minotaur warrior, and the Minotaur tribe's most promising candidate for hero promotion. Bronze Bull highly valued him, and he himself had a certain prestige within the tribe. Thank you, my lord. I've been eating well recently, so I've gained some weight, Terry said, scratching his dreadlocks awkwardly. Haha, keep up the good work. I've already prepared a heart of a hero for you. When you reach 10th tier, come to the main city to be promoted to hero, Fang Hao said, patting his arm. The muscles on his arm were exaggeratedly developed, as if Fang Hao were patting hard stone. Thank you, my lord. I will not let you or the chieftain down, Terry said loudly. You all should also work hard to hone yourselves. If anyone reaches 10th tier, they can go to the main city for the assessment. I'll provide the materials and equipment. Just focus on your efforts. Fang Hao also said to the other Minotaurs, Thank you, my lord. All the Minotaurs thanked him repeatedly. The Minotaurs secretly rejoiced at the correctness of their chieftain's choice. After pledging allegiance to Fang Hao, their village had become better and better. While they were chatting, a few more bone dragons landed. 14 greatsword infantry dismounted, glanced at the Minotaurs, and quickly walked to Fang Hao. My lord, you'll go out with me for a bit, and when you return, you'll be stationed here. Under the command of Captain Terry, Fang Hao continued. Yes, my lord. The heavy sword infantry looked back at Terry. Captain Terry. Terry nodded in agreement. After they got acquainted, Fang Hao continued to build defensive towers and houses for the fortress. They would be able to live there then. When he returned, Fang Hao would arrange for a large number of skeleton soldiers to come over. He would expand the riverbed, making the fortress's wooden bridge the only passage. This would also allow the fortress to better serve as a checkpoint. After dealing with the fortress matters, Terry began to lead his men on guard duty. Fang Hao, meanwhile, took the 14 greatsword infantry and set off southwest. Yesterday, he had received 2 bounties at the tavern. One was for a place called the Well of Sorrowful Souls. Compared to the second one, this name was more detailed. From the name, it seemed that some monster had appeared in the well.so. Their destination this time was the village of the Well of Sorrowful Souls. The team walked for half an hour. Then, they saw a village in the distance. The village looked desolate, as if it had been abandoned for a long time. The village gate was open, and besides an old man squatting at the entrance, there was no one else inside the village. The team approached. Elder, we are from Per City. We heard there was a bounty posted here. The old man's cloudy eyes looked at Fang Hao and his group. Yes. Are you here to collect taxes, or to help? The old man asked. To help. Upon hearing this, a smile appeared on the old man's face, his wrinkles piling up like crumpled tree bark. The old man revealed a smile, not particularly handsome, but kind and simple. His eyes swept over the giant lizard and the lizard men. Then he said to Fang Hao, Are you the captain? Captain. He probably thought Fang Hao was with a mercenary group. Yes. Fang Hao nodded and continued. Old man, are you the only one in the village? Fang Hao looked around the village again, not seeing a single person. I'm just here to see if anyone comes by. I'll go back in the afternoon. No one can live here anymore, the old man said quickly. It's that serious? Of course. A lot of people have died, and the lords in the city don't care. If the other villages weren't afraid of suffering the same fate, we wouldn't bother with this place either. The old man continued. It seemed the villagers had all moved away. They had each found a village to live in, abandoning this one completely. For the villagers, it was a simple solution. Old man, tell us about the monster. The more details, the better, Fang Hao said. All right. The old man squatted down by the wall and began to tell his story. Since the village existed, this well had always been here, and the villagers relied on it for water. But who knew that half a month ago, someone discovered that the wellhead always had a lot of mud left around it, and it gave off a foul odor. What is a well? It concerns the health of the entire village, and the villagers took it seriously. At first, they thought the children in the village were doing it, so they dragged the naughty ones out and gave them a collective beating. But even so, it was still there the next day. The villagers began to realize something was wrong and started keeping watch at night. When night fell, strange noises began to come from the well, and a villager mustered the courage to go forward and check that a dark shadow appeared in the well and swallowed the villager whole. After that, a humanoid monster began to attack the villagers. The village organized the young and strong to try to drive the monster away, but many people died instead. The village arranged for someone to report to the nearby city, but no one cared about their lives. The well was occupied, and there was danger. Slowly, people began to leave, and the village became empty. Is it a ghost? A ghost that swallows people whole? Fang Hao asked curiously. The term ghost should refer to undead. Even Nelson, this orange undead, doesn't eat people. Swallowing people sounds more like a beast or a monster. Yes, it seemed like its entire chest cavity opened up, swallowing an adult in one gulp. The old man recalled the scene, his face gradually showing fear. Fang Hao looked at Anjia and Demichia, and they both shook their heads slightly. They couldn't deduce what the monster was from the old man's description. What about its output method? Fang Hao continued to ask. What's output? I mean, how does it attack? Does it have any ranged moves? It just waves its arms and swallows people. I didn't see anything else. And no professionals came to take care of it. I don't really know if it has any other ranged moves, the old man thought, unable to answer clearly. The battles with the monster all happened at night. In the dark, they could only see a little by the moonlight. Once they saw it eating people, everyone was busy running for their lives. No one was in the mood to look at its attack methods. All right, old man. Take us in to take a look, Fang Hao said again. The old man hesitated, then gritted his teeth and said, I'll take you in and tell you where the well is, that I won't be responsible for the rest. This village is no longer inhabited. If you can't solve it, just wait for the city lord to send troops. Okay. The old man led them into the village. The empty village was desolate, with scattered baskets and furniture everywhere, and collapsed beams, bricks, and tiles in the ruins. That's the well. I can only take you this far, the old man said, his body starting to tremble slightly in the direction he pointed. There was a well. The wellhead, made of stone bricks, was piled with weeds and mud. Scattered pieces of wood and various utensils gave the feeling that everything was being dragged towards the well. It also felt like the direction things would be swept towards the wellhead after a floodgate was opened. All right, old man, go back to the village. If we solve the problem, we'll arrange for someone to go to the village and tell you, Fang Hao said to the old man. Oh, okay. The old man agreed, turning and fleeing as if escaping. Everyone looked at the wellhead, waiting for Fang Hao's orders. Obviously, this matter had nothing to do with them. Getting involved was just asking for trouble, and it could cost their own people their lives. What do we do? Anjia asked. Don't rush. Fang Hao opened his backpack, and the skeletal gray sparrow fluttered its wings and flew out. Watch me. Fang Hao climbed onto the cargo rack on the giant lizard's back, lay down, and cast divine descent. A ball of soul fire ignited in the skeletal gray sparrow's pupils and flew towards the wellhead. It circled above the wellhead. Besides the piles of mud and debris, it didn't find anything else. Looking into the well, the water below was calm, with no sign of anything unusual. Fang Hao controlled the gray sparrow's wings and dove straight into the well. The sunlight shone in, so it wasn't too dark. Halfway down, the gray sparrow opened its wings and hovered in the air on the well wall. There was a huge crack. Behind the crack wasn't dirt or brick, but a dark black hole. Another space. Only the same mud and weeds as at the wellhead remained in the broken brick. Seemed the monster the old man spoke of came out of this crack, or escaped into it, with the mentality that he wasn't afraid to die. Fang Hao flew into the hole. His vision gradually adjusted to the darkness, and he gradually saw the scene inside the cave. This was a long, narrow stone corridor. The neatly chiseled stone walls were gray and dilapidated, and traces of water could still be seen. He continued forward. Then he entered a room. The walls were lit with night-luminescent stones, making the space bright. But Fang Hao's heart became even heavier. This was a room made of human skulls. Fang Hao was in the room, and it felt like entering hell. He felt a bone-chilling cold all over in the very center of the room. There was a stone desk with rotten paper scrolls, a grease-covered candlestick, and some objects that were no longer recognizable. Someone had lived here. What kind of person would live in this place? And the room was made of skulls. It was simply bizarre. The soul fire in his pupils flickered. Fang Hao suppressed the shock in his heart and continued to search for the target monster. Mud stains could still be found on the stone slabs. Under his feet, they extended all the way to a huge pottery jar next to the stone table. Could it be this pottery jar? Fang Hao speculated in his heart, but that wasn't right. That if the pottery jar was the monster, he should be able to see its name. since no name was displayed. It meant it wasn't the target he was looking for. Could it be inside the pottery jar? According to the old man's description, it could open its abdomen and swallow an adult. How could it hide in a pottery jar? Thinking this, he flew towards the pottery jar. The gray sparrow stood on the stone table. Looking down through the mouth of the jar, the inside of the jar was pitch black, and it seemed like some kind of liquid was slowly squirming. Fang Hao carefully looked inside, wanting to see what was inside. Whoosh! A dark shadow surged out of the mouth of the jar, enveloping and devouring the gray sparrow like a large net, then shrinking back into the pottery jar, outside the well. On the back of the giant lizard, Fang Hao suddenly sat up. Damn, that scared me to death. He covered his heart with his left hand, calming his rapid heartbeat. Fang Hao's sudden awakening startled the few people guarding nearby. The infantry immediately drew their weapons and entered a combat stance. They vigilantly watched the position of the wellhead. Jia propped herself up with one hand and leaped directly onto the back of the giant lizard, supporting the startled Fang Hao. What happened? The skeleton gray sparrow is dead, Fang Hao said. What kind of enemy? Did you see it clearly? I saw it clearly, a mud monster. The monster in the pottery jar killed the skeleton gray sparrow head-on. In the last instant, he managed to see the opponent's name clearly. Filthy gray mud monster. Even mud can become a spirit. This world is even more bizarre than Journey to the West. Why can mud become a spirit? What is that? And Jia didn't understand. A filthy gray mud monster, a tier 9 unit. Fang Hao explained again. What is that? And Jia had never seen or heard of AT this moment. Dimiga also walked over and said, it's a type of mud monster, a creature generated by some energy interference. It usually hides in dark, damp places to multiply, devouring creatures that can be dissolved. It's very difficult to deal with. It seemed Dimiga had some understanding of these creatures. Can we kill it with our current forces? Fang Hao asked. He wasn't interested in how the opponent was formed. Perhaps he could learn more about it later. What he needed to consider now was whether their current forces could handle it. It's very difficult. Due to the mud monster's characteristics, it's hard to deal with in close combat. Our forces will likely suffer casualties, Dimiga analyzed. Dimiga was an orange hero. Yet he gave such an evaluation of a monster that was a lower tier unit. It was clear that this mud monster was not as simple as its name suggested. Can ranged attacks work? Much more effective than normal slashes. Dimiga nodded seriously. The heroes present all possessed rich combat experience. Something Fang Hao's cleverness couldn't compare to, since Dimiga said close combat would result in casualties. He would transfer some ranged units over. Besides, the current unit composition wasn't his fighting style, that he still preferred the tactic of overwhelming with numbers. Alright, let's return to the fortress first, Fang Hao ordered directly. The team left the village directly and returned to the fortress. Fang Hao once again used divine descent, possessing a skeleton warrior in the main city, and began counting the numbers with the skeleton conversion ground continuously converting corpses over the past few days. The number of troops stationed in the main city had already exceeded 600,000. He mobilized 30,000 archers, 20,000 necromancers, and 50,000 melee units. These 100,000 troops would be stationed directly at the fortress after clearing the mud monster. Without returning to the main city, another half an hour passed. The undead army arrived at the fortress. And Jia, Dimiga, change your appearance so the nearby villagers don't notice you, Fang Hao said. Seeing the undead army, even if humans discovered them, they would stay far away or even run away. But if Jia and Dimiga were discovered, it would be difficult to explain once the news spread. There would be a lot of trouble. Okay. The two agreed and both put on grayish-white cloaks. Dimiga's cloak was larger, used to cover his large tail. Alright, let's set off. Fang Hao returned to the fortress's command center, only using divine descent to follow the large group. Soon, the large army arrived back at the village. It was still the same scene as they had seen in the morning. There was no change at all. Tear down the obstructing houses and fences for me, Fang Hao ordered again. The skeleton trolls swung the battle axes in their hands, and with a few bangs, they demolished the basic houses into a pile of rubble. This allowed everyone's line of sight to directly see the Position of the wellhead. All units were arranged according to the plan and were ready. Fang Hao changed the target of divine descent, controlling this gray sparrow to burrow back into the crack in the deep well. This time, he didn't look at the jar's opening but made a dash. He directly knocked over the pottery jar. The pottery jar fell to the ground and shattered with a crack. The puddle of gray, thick, viscous black mud inside the jar slightly wriggled. After a brief moment of confusion, it instantly rushed towards the gray sparrow, the destroyer, the wellhead. The gray sparrow rushed out. Everyone nervously watched the position of the opening. If the mud monster didn't come out, they would have to start digging the ground. Suddenly, the gaps between the stone bricks at the wellhead began to become damp with water stains. Viscous black mud appeared at the wellhead along the brick seams, gradually gathering into a large puddle of wriggling, rolling humanoid MUD.IT looked like a wax figure melting under high temperature, with large patches of mud constantly falling off and reforming on its body. Attack. Fang Hao didn't hesitate for a moment. If the mud wasn't difficult to attack in the brick seams, he would have ordered the attack long ago.it wasn't too late now. After giving the order, the ranged units, already positioned, began their attack. Whoosh. The sound of rushing air was like fighter jets flying past, carrying bursts of sonic booms. Tens of thousands of spells and arrows launched a frenzied attack towards the mud monster in the center. The scene was grand and somewhat intimidating. Dimika stood aside, his throat bobbing. Even he, an orange tier 8 hero, would likely be instantly reduced to ashes when facing such a dense attack. Boom. Spells and arrows densely hit the mud monster that had just condensed into shape. Bang, with a muffled sound. The mud monster's body instantly exploded, and mud splattered like raindrops. The scattered small mud splatters were still wriggling, and in the next second, they slid like snakes, rushing towards the ranged units in the back. Filthy gray mud monster derivative. The mud monster's name changed, and its tier also decreased. The small mud monsters wriggled their bodies, rolling up grass clippings, coins, and debris on the ground, while attacking nearby enemies. Their bodies gradually grew larger as they accumulated more filler. Prioritize killing the enemies near yourselves. Fang Hao shouted. Jia and Dimika also issued the same command. Spells and arrows once again attacked the approaching mud monsters, killing them all. As for the mud monsters that had grown larger and reached a certain size, they would still explode again, splitting into countless mud monster derivatives. If Fang Hao didn't have many units, this kind of mud monster would indeed be very difficult to kill completely. Even if nearby cities sent armies to suppress it, it would be difficult to kill it, and it might even cause the mud monster to continuously expand, threatening other nearby villages and cities. The battle lasted over an hour, and the mud monster finally turned into a puddle of water stains. But the village was gone. The entire village was a mess, as if it had been bombed by missiles. Is it dead? Fang Hao looked at Dimika. The latter nodded slightly and said, the mud monster's intelligence isn't high. Since it hasn't continued to attack, it must be dead. That's good. Fang Hao also breathed a sigh of relief. He had also done a good deed for the nearby villagers. All right, clean up the battlefield and collect all the usable arrows. The skeletons began cleaning up the battlefield. Fang Hao and the other two came to the wellhead and looked down. The well water was still calm, and there was no change inside the well. Bring the rope ladder and open that opening a bit. A rope ladder was lowered into the well. Jia, holding the edge of the well, was about to go down when Fang Hao grabbed her arm. What are you doing? I'm going down to see if there's anything good. What if you're careless and miss something? And Jia looked worried. Don't go down. There might still be danger. You and Demeter stay up here and direct the skeletons to search thoroughly. I'll just go down and take a look. Fang Hao said. The stone cave below was a bit eerie. The walls were built with skulls. Even though he lived with skeletons, Fang Hao felt a bit uncomfortable seeing them. There might be something strange that could affect Jia, so he didn't plan on letting her go down. Besides, there wasn't much inside anyway. Can you handle it? I used the skeleton ash sparrow to look earlier. It's just a bare stone cave with a stone table in the center. I'm not blind. I won't miss anything. Fang Hao said. All right then. Search carefully. And Jia climbed back over the edge of the well. Don't worry. Fang Hao went down the rope ladder. Stopping at the crack, he removed some of the stone bricks on either side of the crack, bent down, and crawled straight in. Since it was his third time entering, he wasn't as shocked or scared that he carefully checked some clay pots. After confirming there were no mud monsters inside, he began searching thoroughly. The skulls on either side of the walls had merged with the structure. Even upon closer inspection, no information could be found. The items on the stone table had already rotted. He threw the rotten, broken things onto the ground, but the items underneath made his heart skip a beat that a fragment page appeared. This was the second fragment page Fang Hao had collected. The first one increased the power of his spells. Now he had obtained a Demon Codex fragment. What kind of bad habit did the people here have? Why would you tear it up? The ability granted by the Demon Codex fragment made Fang Hao's heart pound violently. Demon Space. A small magical space where things can be stored and retrieved at any time. Isn't this like a spatial ring or the Immortals' sleeve universe? With this, he could use the demon space to carry items. If the space was large enough, he wouldn't need to bring so many carts for marching in the future. He alone could carry everything back. By then, even the marching speed could be increased. This item was truly a pleasant surprise. Looking at the gloomy stone cave now, it no longer seemed so eerie and strange. Putting the fragment page away, Fang Hao continued searching. In the corner, he found another gold treasure chest. Since seeing the platinum treasure chest, seeing gold no longer caused any ripples in his heart. He opened it directly. There was nothing interesting in the well, so he continued to check the second piece of equipment. It was a purple item, the rings. Attributes made Fang Hao's heart stir. The effect of the Ring of No Regrets was exactly what Fang Hao needed. If he ever came into conflict with forces of the light element, this ring would play a huge role. Speaking of which, why did he fit in so well with villains? Any place related to the undead or demons seemed to yield him some good things. A stone resembling amber, with a drop of blood sealed inside. Holding it in his hand and shaking it slightly, he could see the blood swirling back and forth. More strange and bizarre things were added to his collection. This was Fang Hao's second acquisition after the vampire's heart. Obtaining demon blood. Even the description, very useful, didn't tell him how to use it could be drunk. But the effects were unknown. Who would dare drink it then? In short, it was a gain. He'd put it away for now. The next two items were Chaos Coins and Demon Stones. Chaos Coins, needless to say, were the current universal currency. Demon Stones were probably the recruitment materials for the demon race. Indeed, they were. He packed everything he could take into his backpack. He walked out of the cave entrance and climbed out of the well using the rope ladder. Did you find anything good? And Jia asked excitedly. Yes, some very useful things. Below is a stone cave belonging to the demon race. Fang Hao patted his backpack. Jia looked at his seemingly empty backpack and was about to climb down to search again. Fang Hao persuaded her several times before she gave up the idea of going down. Collect all the nearby stones and seal the cave entrance. Fang Hao said to the skeletons standing by. The village had now become a ruin. Rubble was everywhere, making it easy to find. He didn't know if the villagers would return later, but it was better to seal up that stone cave. The scene inside was truly a bit too frightening. When everything was finished, Fang Hao led the large force back. On the way back, and Jia left the group and headed towards a village to the south. She rode her horse near the village. Her beastman appearance still attracted the attention of many villagers. Jia scanned around and saw the old man chatting with others under a large tree not far away. As she approached, the old man also saw Jia. It's you, the young girl from this morning. The old man smiled again, his face full of wrinkles. The village's problem has been solved. You don't need to worry anymore. But don't go back to live there. The houses have all collapsed. And Jia said directly. The village had become a ruin during the great battle. It was more convenient to rebuild a village than to try and live there again. The monster. It's been eliminated. The old man looked completely shocked. It's been eliminated. And Jia finished speaking, turned her horse, and rode away. Wait. The old man called out to Jia. Is there anything else? The old man fumbled around in his chest pocket. He pulled out a cloth bag, opening it layer by layer. Inside were 5 gold coins. This is the reward from the bounty. The old man handed it over and Jia glanced at it, then looked at the village. Forget it. Live well. If you have trouble in the future, post a bounty at the tavern. Thank you. Can you tell me your name? And Jia, what about the black-haired young man? Fang Hao. And Jia said that, raised her horsewhip, and rode off into the distance. Only after Jia had left did the surrounding villagers gather around. They asked questions all at once. The old man, his face full of smiles, told everyone that the monster that destroyed the village was dead, and someone had avenged the dead villagers. The large army returned to the fortress in a mighty procession. Fang Hao took the backpack from the skeleton's hand. When he took out the Demon Codex fragment, the system prompt sounded again. Demon Codex fragment. Do you want to record it? Similar to the Elemental Codex fragment, the system book could record it. This meant he didn't have to carry a single page around everywhere, which could easily get lost. Record. The Demon Codex turned into a beam of light and drilled into the Lord's book. Fang Hao immediately opened the Lord's book. An extra page had appeared, named Demon Space, the name of the ability granted by the Demon Codex. On the page, the right side showed a model of an empty room, and the left side had a series of tables. How was this supposed to work? He walked up to a wooden table and thought about collecting it. The wooden table was still in front of him and had not been stored in the demon space. Was it not working? Fang Hao continued to try. He placed his hand on the wooden table and again thought about collecting it. The wooden table disappeared into thin air, and the next second it appeared in the room model on the page.